If I were starting violin today, these are the first apps I would use as a beginner. Because I know, when you are a beginner, simple things even as tuning a violin or knowing how to find scores can be huge obstacles. So let me save you some time and show you the best free apps that will make violin learning feel simpler and most importantly, more affordable. Let's just start with the basics, because when we are beginners or when we just got a new violin, or even if we are a bit more advanced, the first thing we need to do is to tune your violin. I have the best app for it, because I think as beginners it's very difficult to use chromatic tuners because they have so much information and they are basically just showing all the notes, which we don't need. We need to tune only our open strings. So in this case, I always suggest to my students that they download the Violin Tuner by Like Tones. And I love this app because it's just simple to work with and you tune string by string. So in this case, for example, if you are tuning the E string, then you will press E5. And the good thing is that you can also hear the sound of the string, which is great for beginners. Usually when we start tuning violin, we go for the A4. That's our reference. And just to show you a bit how it works when we tune with our violin, for example, in this case, A4, and I will just play my string and check if it's in tune. As you can see, it's a tiny bit lower. So we will try to make it as centered as possible. Of course, when we have fine tuners, it's easier to adjust. I don't have them, but when you are a beginner, most certainly you have, and then it becomes easier to tune. What I love about this app is that it also shows you which string represents to each note. So in this case, like for example, in our A4, you can see it's like the higher string on the right. So it's really great if you are doubting which string should you tune. Another thing I like about this app is that it doesn't work like as a chromatics tuner. Usually when we use chromatic tuners, they just show like the whole range of notes, and then even if you play an A, it's gonna detect all the others. While in here, it's basically locked. If I press, for example, A4, and I try to tune my D string while the A4 is activated, then it's not gonna detect my note. While in a chromatic tuner, you will still show the D4 and that it's in tune. So in this case, if you are tuning A4, it will only recognize A4, which is great for beginners. And I advise to use this app only with the bow. So basically when you tune, try to tune it with the bow and then adjust either in the fine tuners or in the pegs. And then if it's still not in tune, then come back and tune again with the bow. I've seen that with pizzicato, the app sometimes doesn't recognize very good the sound, and then you eventually could break a string. So be careful with that. The next app that a lot of beginners skip, but that is so important, is a metronome. And of course, when you are starting violin, maybe you don't understand the importance of having a metronome, but it's crucial because at a later stage, if you need to play with piano accompaniment or with anyone else, you will need to keep a beat. And if you don't train that, especially if you don't have any music background, it will be very hard to follow, because violin learning is already super hard. If you are not used to this extra task, it's gonna become even harder. So the app I always recommend is Metronome Beats. You can also download it in Play Store or Apple Store. I love this app because it's very, very intuitive as well. Like we have the main screen with the tempo marking, so we can easily adjust by +1 or -1, and we can also add 5 or -5, which is great because a lot of tempos don't actually have very specific markings like 92. It's either 90 or 110, and so by going 5 to 5, it's actually easier to control the tempo. You are also able to change the beats per bar and the clicks per beat. I would keep it as 4/4. Of course, if you have a song in 3/4, then you can just change it to 3 here. So I will not explore too many difficult options here because it's just either the music is in 3 or in 4, and maybe sometimes in 2, so you can also change that. And another feature I really love about this app is the tap tempo, because you basically can tap the tempo that you need to practice. So in case you don't know, okay, is my piece in 90 BPM or in 50 BPM? If you have no idea, or if you want to practice in another tempo that it's not the final tempo, then you can just tap the tempo that you want to practice. Imagine you have a melody like dun da da dun 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 dun. You can just tap pam paradam pam 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 pam, and you know this is 73. So the app has a lot of features. There are some that are a bit more complex, but I would advise you to start with the simple ones because that's mostly what I use and what I believe that beginners will use also. So feel free to download it as well. So now that you have your tuner and your metronome, the next step is to get some scores, of course. For that, I have the best app that you can get. And that's an app that I also use as a professional and that a lot of professional musicians use. And that is IMSLP, which stands for International Music Score Library Project. That's the fancy version. I love IMSLP. There's a lot of scores there, but mostly classical. As you can see, we have the main page. My page is in Portuguese because I'm from Portugal. Actually, it's mixed in Portuguese and English. That's weird. Okay. Anyways, you can find some scores organized by composers or nationality, time period. So there's a lot of sections that you can search scores in. And what I like to do the most, because I already know most of the time what I want to play. Imagine I'm gonna play a symphony in my orchestra or something. Then I write, okay, Beethoven Symphony 5. And then, of course, I have the first search result will be most probably the IMSLP score. In my case, because I want the first violin part, then I will go to parts or parts. It's in Portuguese. And then I will go to a publisher that I like because there's a lot of publishers to pick from. Well, let's go with this one. I think it's going to be more readable. And then, of course, I search for Violin 1, which is Violin 1. And then you understand, you continue, and you get very easily the score. And then it's free to download, you can also print it, and basically IMSLP is free and you can search for all the scores you need within the classical music range. So if you are thinking to get arrangements of pop songs or even arrangements of classical music for beginners, I don't recommend IMSLP. For that, I have an app that is great, which is MuseScore. It has a full catalog of a lot of arrangements done by different people around the world. For example, I could make an arrangement and publish in MuseScore. That's how it works. If you look at MuseScore main page, then you have a lot of filters on your left. And that's great because when we look at the filters, we can just pick whatever works for us. For example, if I'm a violin beginner, then I literally press violin beginner and immediately you'll have a selection of a lot of scores to look at. For example, imagine you are just learning violin and you want to learn this piece, the Titanic. Everybody loves the Titanic. We can just press it, and the problem with the free version of the MuseScore is that most probably you cannot download the PDF of the score without paying it. But that's not a problem, because if you're just practicing, for example, Titanic, then you can just practice from your computer or even make a screenshot sometimes. And the good thing about the platform itself is that you have a whole world just in this bar here. You can literally play the piece, like the MIDI part. You can change BPM, so if you want to practice a bit more slow, you can also change. And these tools are great because if you want to practice a bit faster or a bit slower, this gives you the freedom to do that. And ignore a bit instruments because, for example, in this piece, it says violin beginners because you can play this piece also in a violin, but the audio is a piano. But it really doesn't matter as long as the sound is in the correct pitch. So that's why this app is great, is because it gives you the freedom to practice in the way you want. So feel free to use these features for free. And before I forget, MuseScore also has a music writing app. That is also for free, and I use it a lot. I'm gonna show you a bit just so you know how it works. So of course, again, everything is in Portuguese, but the important thing is that you understand how it works. So for example, here I will go to cordas friccionadas, which is the violin. It's a bowed instrument, and I will go for it and just say yes. And then it opens just a blank score. You can give yourself a title. You can compose here. Like even as a beginner, it's so fun to compose, so you can just try things out. And you can also sometimes download and just put the score here, and then you can edit the score to make, for example, an easier version or more difficult version. So it's an incredible tool to use. And now I'm going to show you my personal favorite app, and I use it literally every day. Because after you get your scores, you need a way to organize them and also to take notes on them. And this one is the best one for that, and it's also free. So the app I'm talking about is MobileSheets. As an orchestra musician, of course, I have a lot of repertoire to learn every week. So if I I don't organize myself, I'm literally lost. So as you can see here, you can organize scores within pieces or set lists or collections or composers or even years. So what I do usually is I mostly focus on the composers, because otherwise I have to edit a lot the scores and sometimes I don't want to waste time on that. For example, putting the years is not necessary. As long as you have a way to organize, for example, within composers, that's great. Basically, collections is, for example, if you have a lot of different types of music, for example, in my case, I play a lot of chamber music, but also orchestra, then every time I upload a score, I immediately write which category belongs to. So if, for example, in the orchestra part, I have all these, and then in my chamber music, I have some other pieces. I have this app also in my tablet, so I use it mostly in my tablet. But setlist I use a lot for concerts, because it's basically, you can join a lot of different scores from different composers and everything, and just play it in one go. For example, if you have a Mozart piece, then you will have page 1, 2, 3, 4. The piece finishes, and immediately in page 5 you have a new piece by Beethoven, for example. This is great if you have a performance and you already know the order of the pieces you want to play, so I use it a lot for concerts. And of course, pieces is just the title and the piece you are playing. And I'm going to show you also a bit the features of writing within the score. For example, if we take here Bruch Violin Concerto, then we can walk through, and then if we press on the score, we find this little pencil here, and this pencil has so many options. You can write, of course in the computer is not very handy, in the tablet with a pen is much better, but of course you can write your fingerings very easily here just by using this pencil, and of course you can delete whatever you want. And I have 2 tips for you to use in this app. One of those is to put your pencil in red, because of course our scores are mainly black and white, and when we put a fingering in red, it really shows off like immediately, so it's really easy to see. So I recommend that you put the pencil in red. And another suggestion I have for you, you have this marker right next to the pencil, and usually of course markers are to mark text, but of course we are musicians, we don't care about text. So basically what I use it for is I put opacity 100% and then I change color to white. And why do I do this? Because sometimes within the scores I don't want something. For example, do you see these markings that someone else wrote in the score? This is something that is already saved as a PDF. So you can easily delete all these markings that you don't want within the score so that your score is more neat. And this is great if you want to take this kind of information. So these are my 2 tips for this app, is to have the red pencil and the white marker. And of course, within the app, we also have a lot of different options. For example, we have these stamps, which are amazing. For example, if you want a piano in a specific part, then you can just press it and then press on the score on the moment that you want the piano to be. Also for bowings is very good, because a lot of times it's tiring to do everything by hand with a pen. So you can just press, and I'm gonna do a down bow in this D, and then on the chord I'm gonna do a down bow again, and then a up bow, whatever you want to do. So it's very easy to work with. And also for fingerings, if you don't like and you want the scores just to be more pretty, then you can just immediately put, okay, this doesn't work as a 0, but you understand what I mean. So you can just put whatever you want with the stamps as well. And you are also able to download a recording to the app so you can listen to it while you practice the piece. So there's a lot of options, like I cannot even go through it. Maybe one day I will do a full video about this app because it's great. But right now, these are the main things I use within the app. And let me know in a comment what are your favorite features. And of course, after getting your basics and also your scores, we need to practice. So for that, I have also a very good option for you, because there is a part in my Patreon that is completely free and that's full of events. When we enter in my Patreon, you will see a button here that says join, and you can join for free. When you join for free, if you go down a bit, you will see a page called Collections, and I pinned the Violin Community free for you to check immediately what's available for you. So if you open, you will see a bunch of events that happen. For example, practice sprints that you can just practice with other people, and these are great for getting a bit more practice in your routine and also to get a bit more motivated by seeing other people practicing. Of course, these sessions are basically muted, and a lot of times I'm also there practicing with you. And even for myself, when I practice in these practice sprints, they are great for me because I feel that whenever I practice there, my exigency goes a bit up, because I know that people are there, and even though they are not listening to me, there is always this feeling that someone is in the room, so you get more conscious about your practice, which is great. So feel free to join those. They are happening almost every day. Sometimes we also have workshops happening that are for free, so you can also join. And also we have a question and answers live stream, which is great to ask questions about your posture or practice or anything related to violin basically. So feel free to also join those. Those are also completely free. So this is a platform that I aim to create for people to practice and to have kind of a community of violinists. So I will be glad to have you also there. And lastly, I have 2 bonus apps for you. And these, I define them as bonus because as beginners, if you don't have a music background, it's really nice to train your music theory and also your ears. So these 2 apps are great for that. So the first one I want to talk about is musictheory.net. And this one is amazing because you have so many exercises, you have so many ways to learn music theory. So I really recommend in case you don't have any music background or you don't understand how to even read a score. You basically have the main page and you have lessons. Of course, there is a lot of lessons to go through. Some are a bit more advanced and some are really for beginners. For example, if you want to just learn the different staffs, the different clefs, then you can just go here. Or if you want to learn note durations, then these are great for beginners. But of course, there are some more advanced things like, for example, non-harmonic tones or phrases and cadences, which are more for advanced musicians. But it's not a problem, you can just check whatever works for you. And of course, if you are interested anyways to learn about more advanced things, who am I to stop you? So you can check the lessons and you can also check exercises that you learn according to the lesson. And I love that this website has a lot of identification for ear, which is not very common in a lot of music theory apps. So in this one, you can just identify the note on a score and you hear it as well. But also there are some that you can identify, for example, intervals, or you can also identify chords, and it's a lot. And you also have a lot of ear training options. For example, the keyboard ear training is great for your relative ear. For example, here you can check which note is next and so on. And you also have a lot of different ones for note ear training, interval training, scale training, and chord training. So what you have here is a lot of options, so feel free to use it. It's completely free and it's a great way to learn music theory and also train your ears. And one little thing I noticed about musictheory.net is that it has a lot of ear training and a lot of exercises for music theory, but it doesn't work a lot on your rhythm. So an app that I love to use for that is the Rhythm Trainer. So in the main page, you basically have a lot of different types of rhythms and things you can work on within rhythm. So basically how it works, you have different tests and then you press the one you have to do, you press start, and then it just starts counting. And then how it works, you have to repeat the exact rhythm that they do. So it's also a great app in case you want to also develop your rhythm sense. So I hope this video gave you a clear direction and made violin a bit more accessible to you. And if you want a bit more help in beginner topics, feel free to subscribe and check all the videos I have made for you, so you can learn also for free and in your own time. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Ciao, ciao!